There are days in life when we push ourselves so hard to leave a mark, to accomplish something, to be remembered, to prove we matter, that we forget the quiet truth sitting underneath it all. Most marks disappear anyway, and what stays is the journey itself. You see this lesson everywhere. Footprints on a beach fade, names carved in wood weather away, even memories shift like sand in the wind. And yet, as people, we chase permanence as if it can love us back. We rush, we compare, we strain, we force our presence into the world, forgetting that the softest steps often carry the deepest meaning. And so, before this story begins, let this be your real-world reminder tonight. You don't need to leave a permanent mark to live a meaningful life. You only need to walk with awareness. Welcome to SleepyZenStory. Let your breath settle. Let your shoulders fall. Let the day loosen its grip. You're safe now, and the night is ready to guide you somewhere quiet, somewhere ancient, somewhere where the sand remembers only the softness of your steps, where nothing needs to stay and nothing needs to be proved. Let's begin. The story opens beneath a moon hanging low over a vast desert, its silver light running like cool water over waves of sand. The wind drifts slowly across the dunes, creating shapes that change with each moment, as if the desert itself is slowly dreaming. And here in this endless quiet, your footsteps sink softly into the warm grains, each step a whisper, each step a reminder that you're moving through something timeless. Nothing chases you here. Nothing demands your attention. The desert simply receives you, the way stillness receives the tired mind at the end of a long day. And with each step, you begin to understand the night. It is not the mark you leave in the sand that matters. It is how gently you move across it.
The desert night stretches out in every direction, wide and unhurried, as if time itself has chosen to walk beside you rather than rush ahead. The moon glows softly above, wrapped in a thin veil of drifting clouds, and the dunes ripple like quiet thoughts, rising and falling with no need for destination. As you continue forward, your footsteps sink into the sand with gentle certainty, and the wind gathers around your ankles like a shy companion. There is no story pulling you forward, no task to complete, no finish line waiting in the distance. There is only movement, simple, steady, honest. And in this wide emptiness, the smallest motions feel sacred. You carry a lantern in your hand, its flame flickering with a warm, amber glow. It lights only a small circle around you, yet it feels enough. It feels like the desert approves of this softness. A single light wandering through endless space, not trying to conquer it, not trying to illuminate all of it, but simply offering a quiet presence. Sometimes the wind nudges the flame sideways, making the shadows dance across the sand, stretching and shrinking like silent memories. You watch these shadows without clinging to them, letting them shift and disappear without resistance. A thought moves through your mind, unforced. Maybe life isn't about leaving something behind. Maybe it's about moving gently with what's here. The wind seems to agree, brushing your cheek with a cool breath, carrying away that thought as gracefully as it arrived. There is relief in that. The relief of not needing to hold on, not needing to prove, not needing to push the world into shape. Instead, you're simply a traveler in a landscape older than your worries, guided by a lantern that doesn't demand to shine far, only enough to show the next step. And maybe that's all any of us ever truly needs. The desert sighs softly, dunes shifting, sand whispering against sand. The echoes drift outward and dissolve into the night. Everything here knows how to move without leaving scars. Everything changes without fear of being forgotten. And as you breathe in the warm scent of dust and starlight, you begin to feel the same freedom settling into your chest, a looseness, a spaciousness, a calm acceptance that tonight nothing needs to be more than it already is.
The lantern's warm glow sways gently with each step, casting a soft halo against the sand as you approach a tall, sloping dune that rises like a quiet giant in the night. Its curve is smooth, untouched by anything but the slow patience of the wind. It feels like the dune has been waiting, not for you specifically, but for any traveler willing to move slowly enough to notice its stillness. The desert is full of places like this, places that reveal themselves only to those who are not rushing past. You stand at the base of the dune for a moment, breathing in the silence. The moonlight rolls over its crest in a thin silver ribbon, like a path painted onto the sand. There's a calm invitation here, not a command, not a challenge, but a gentle suggestion. Climb if you wish. Nothing demands it, but the view may change you. You begin to walk upward, each step sinking with a soft sigh beneath your feet. The sand gives way easily, accepting your presence without resistance. It doesn't trap you, doesn't hold you back, doesn't cling to your footprints with desperation. It lets you pass, as all things eventually do. You feel the subtle shift of the earth beneath your weight, steady, honest, temporary. And in that movement, something settles inside you. The climb is slow, not because it's difficult, but because it feels unnecessary to rush. The night doesn't care how fast you move. The moon doesn't reward speed. Only your breath accompanies you, rising and falling like the tide. Halfway up, you pause, not because you're tired, but because the stillness asks you to. A thin breeze brushes past your ears, carrying with it the distant echo of sand swirling somewhere beyond your sight. The sound is barely there, like a memory half remembered, but it brings with it a feeling of clarity. You're not here to conquer the dune. You're not here to leave a trail behind you as proof. You're here because the journey upward feels honest. It feels real. As you look back, your footprints stretch behind you in a soft, winding line, visible now, but only for the moment. You know that the wind will smooth them over, maybe in minutes, maybe in hours. They will disappear completely, and the dune will return to its quiet perfection. And strangely, that brings comfort, because even if the sand forgets your steps, the experience remains in you. The weight of your breath, the sway of your lantern, the moon guiding your path without ever asking for acknowledgement. When you finally reach the top, the desert opens around you in a vast circle of silver and shadow. Dunes ripple outward like waves frozen in time, and the sky curves overhead, heavy with stars that watch without judgment. The moment stretches, slower and wider than anything the day ever allowed. And in that stillness, you hear the quiet truth. It is not the mark you leave on the dune, but the way your heart quieted as you climbed it.
At the top of the dune, you stand in the soft cradle of moonlight, and for a moment, the world feels perfectly balanced. The lantern's glow forms a small oasis of gold in the vast silver night, flickering gently against the wind. Your breath, slow, steady, grounded, mixes with the quiet around you until it becomes part of the desert itself. Nothing interrupts, nothing pulls, nothing tries to shape your mind into anything other than this simple awareness. A soft wind rises, not sharp, not cold, just a wandering breeze moving through the dunes with the curiosity of a traveler. It brushes along your arms, slides through your clothing, and drifts around your lantern's flame without extinguishing it. And as it circles you, it feels almost intentional, as if the wind has chosen to arrive at this exact moment to help you release the things you've been carrying for far too long. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the air move through your thoughts the way it moves through the sand, lifting some grains, letting others settle, never forcing, never clinging. You feel something light within you shift, almost like a knot loosening. Worries you didn't even realize had weight soften at the edges. Old expectations crumble into finer dust. The wind is not taking anything from you. It's reminding you that you don't need to hold so tightly. Slowly, you open your eyes again. The dunes stretch outward in all directions, and in their gentle shapes, you sense a truth too quiet for daylight. Most of what we carry is lighter than we think. It only feels heavy because we grip it so tightly. The breeze grows slightly stronger, lifting a small trail of sand into the air. It flows around you in a soft spiral, sparkling pale silver under the moon. For a moment, it feels like the desert itself is breathing out, releasing what no longer serves it, and inviting you to do the same. You take a breath in. You let a breath out, and something inside you releases, not with force or effort, but with the same softness as the shifting dunes. You sense the things you've been holding, pressures, guilt, comparisons, expectations, lifting from your shoulders, not because they vanished, but because you remembered you can set them down. Below the dune, the desert floor stretches out into a vast openness, a reminder that every direction is possible and no path needs to be perfect. The sand doesn't judge the shape of your steps. The wind doesn't care how far you've gone. The world here moves with patience, with acceptance, with a kind of quiet wisdom that doesn't need to be understood to be felt. And as you stand in that wind, lantern warm in your hand, you realize something simple but powerful. You don't need to carve a lasting mark into the world. You only need to move through it in a way that feels true.
A little further along the path, another object appears. A window frame standing upright with no wall to hold it. When you look through it, you expect a forest, a sky, something familiar. But no, it shows only stillness. Not darkness, not light, just a quiet, silent pause that feels like it's breathing with you. When you step closer, the air cools, and for a moment your whole mind feels like this window, wide open, holding nothing, needing nothing. And in that emptiness, you feel safe. The ground shifts. It becomes softer, warmer, like it's welcoming you with each step. No crunching leaves, no snapping twigs, only the faint hush of your feet moving forward. This path doesn't want you to rush. It wants you to melt into it, to let go of the hardness you carried in your shoulders, your jaw, your chest. Every step feels lighter than the one before, as if the forest itself has decided to take some of your weight. A single branch hangs low across the path, not blocking you, just guiding you. There's a small symbol carved into it, glowing faintly. You don't need to touch it. You somehow already know what it means. Not every answer comes from thinking. Some answers come from stopping the noise. It's a message for you, the kind that appears only when you're quiet enough to hear it. You pass under the branch, and the world feels just a little more gentle.
A breeze rises, slow and warm. It circles you once, like a soft embrace, and then moves past you as if it has somewhere important to take what it gathered. Your chest feels lighter. Your breath goes deeper without you forcing anything. Your mind stops clinging so tightly to what you brought with you. The forest doesn't ask you to forget your worries. It just carries them for a while, so you can remember what it feels like to be unburdened. Up ahead, you see an old tree with a natural seat shaped into its roots. It looks like it's been waiting for someone, and you know exactly who. When you sit, the tree doesn't move, but its presence wraps around you like a slow, grounding breath. Everything that was loud becomes distant. Everything that was chaotic becomes soft. You're not thinking anymore. You're just here. Safe. Held. Resting in the kind of quiet that feels ancient. Just ahead, a small lantern hangs from a thin branch, swaying gently as if it has been watching your approach for a long time. Its light isn't bright, more like a quiet pulse, glowing softly in the dimness around you. When you step closer, the lantern steadies, as though it's syncing with your breathing. With every inhale, the glow warms. With every exhale, it softens. You don't touch it. You don't need to. Standing near it feels like standing beside someone who understands your silence without asking for explanations. For a moment, you let your shoulders drop, letting the warmth gather around you, and the path ahead feels calmer than before, as if the forest is telling you that slowing down is not a mistake, but the way you are meant to walk all along. The desert night stretched endlessly, its cool air brushing along the wanderer's face as he moved with slow, steady steps across the soft, shifting sand. Each footfall pressed into the earth, then softened again as the wind carried the edges away, reshaping the ground without resistance. He noticed how the sand didn't demand a reason for his passing.
didn't ask why he walked or where he intended to end up. It only received his steps for the moment they existed, holding them gently before letting them fade into the quiet vastness. A faint hush of wind circled him, carrying the scent of distant stone and untouched dunes, reminding him that the world did not need his accomplishments carved into it to keep turning. As he walked, he realized how often he moved through life chasing an end point, as if the value of the journey depended entirely on the results it delivered, as if steps taken without a grand conclusion somehow counted less. But here, under the slow drift of starlight, he felt something different, the quiet understanding that meaning could rise not from arrival, but from awareness, from the very act of taking each step with presence and softness. And as he lifted his foot again, he felt a gentle truth echo inside him. Sometimes the desert asks for nothing except that you walk without trying to prove anything. The wanderer paused atop a gentle slope of sand, watching the long ribbon of footprints stretching behind him, curving across the moonlit desert like a fragile thread. For a moment, he wondered how far he had come, how long he had been walking, and what these quiet miles added up to. But as he stood there, a small gust swept over the ridge, lifting grains of sand in a soft shimmer and carrying them across his path. Slowly, patiently, the wind began to erase the trail behind him, smoothing the surface until the steps were barely shadows, then nothing at all. Strangely, he felt no loss, only clarity. He realized that what disappears is not wasted, and what isn't remembered is not meaningless. Each step had shaped him, even if the desert chose not to keep the record. Life worked the same way. Countless efforts, unnoticed moments, forgotten days, all of them leaving quiet impressions inside, not outside. Standing in the settling wind, he understood that a mark left in the world was temporary, but a mark left within oneself endured quietly, guiding the next step without needing applause or recognition. And with that understanding, he let the wind finish smoothing the sand, feeling lighter now, that he no longer needed the evidence of where he had been to trust where he was going. As the wanderer continued forward, the desert night seemed to walk with him, wrapping around his shoulders like a cool, drifting cloak. The sky above was wide and quiet, stitched with slow-moving stars that shimmered like ancient guideposts. He felt the presence of the night not as emptiness, but as a companion, a stillness that gave space to his thoughts without pushing them, a silence that made room for breath, for awareness, for the soft rhythm of walking without urgency. With each step, he sensed how the world around him carried lessons that didn't shout or insist. The dunes shifted gently, teaching flexibility. The wind changed direction without reason, reminding him that life moves in cycles. And the endless horizon stretched outward, showing him that journeys don't need to be conquered, only experienced. In the calm embrace of the desert, he felt a quiet alignment rise within him, as if the world whispered that there was nothing to rush toward and nothing to run from. The night didn't judge the pace of his steps or measure their efficiency. It simply walked beside him, teaching him that presence was the real destination, and the rest was only scenery, passing softly in the dark.
The wanderer approached a tall dune, rising like a silent wave frozen in the desert night, its graceful slope glowing under the silver wash of moonlight. Each grain of sand shimmered gently as a cool breeze brushed across its surface, carrying the faint sound of distant shifting dunes, a soft rhythmic sigh that seemed older than memory itself. He placed his foot at the base, feeling the slight give beneath his sole, and began to climb without rush, without goals, without the self-pressure that usually tightened his chest. The dune didn't ask him to climb it. It didn't offer a reward at the top, nor did it punish him for moving slowly. It simply existed, steady and quiet, waiting in its own timelessness. As he moved, breath deep and unhurried, he sensed how often he had lived his life chasing outcomes, believing each effort must produce something visible, measurable, applaudable. Yet this dune asked for none of that. It allowed him to struggle a little, to breathe harder, to feel his muscles warm beneath the cool air, all without demanding that his effort be justified. When he reached the crest, the night opened around him like a vast, gentle sea, and he realized that some paths in life don't need meaning assigned to them. They reveal their quiet worth simply by being walked. And standing there, wind brushing over him, he felt a rare truth settle softly inside. Not everything we climb must lead to a purpose. Some things are climbed to remember how to move. The wanderer descended the dunes slowly, each step sinking into the soft, cool sand with a gentle hush, leaving a trail of clear footprints behind him. For a moment he watched them stretch across the slope like a quiet map of where he had just been, small impressions disappearing into the silver glow of moonlight. There was something strangely comforting about the way they marked his path, as if the desert were acknowledging his existence, offering proof that he had moved, breathed, and chosen a direction. But before he could take more than a few breaths, a wandering breeze gathered itself from across the open plains. It swept in light and playful, brushing over the dune's surface with a careful hand. Grain by grain, the edges of his footprint softened, blurred, and dissolved, until the sand lay unmarked again, smooth, untouched, unchanged. He stood there with the wind wrapping around him, realizing how quickly the world forgets even the clearest traces we leave behind. Not out of cruelty, but because everything is always shifting, always returning to its own quiet balance. For a moment he felt a small ache, the human ache of wanting something to remain, for the world to hold on to a piece of us. Then he breathed deeply, letting the night fill his chest, and understood the gentler truth. The value of a step isn't in how long it stays visible, but in the living of it. He walked on, no longer looking back, trusting that the desert didn't need to remember his path for it to matter. The desert wind stirred again, brushing past the wanderer like a quiet companion who knew no expectations. It swept through the dunes with no concern for where it had been or where it was going, carrying tiny grains of sand, loose thoughts, and distant echoes across the open space. He paused to feel it fully, the way it threaded through his hair, grazed his skin, and mingled with the slow rhythm of his breathing. There was no measurement in its passage, no judgment, no urgency. It simply moved, attentive to nothing and yet present everywhere. In that moment, he realized how often he had carried invisible burdens, counting the hours, tallying achievements, weighing mistakes, and marking failures as though they mattered eternally. And yet the wind reminded him that the world does not keep score, that value is not in the weight of what we do, but in the presence we bring to it. Standing there under the expansive night sky, the wanderer let the wind lift his worries lightly from his shoulders, scattering them like harmless dust across the dunes. With every inhale, he felt a quiet liberation, a sense that living fully does not require permanence. It requires attentiveness, softness, and the willingness to let the world be as it is while you move through it with calm and care. And with that, he took another step, carrying only the gentle awareness that each movement, however fleeting, mattered quietly in its own way. The wanderer reached a smaller dune just beyond the slope he had descended, its surface undisturbed, smooth and patient. He stepped onto it slowly, feeling the grains shift beneath his weight, soft and pliant, as though the earth itself were attentive to his presence. Here, there was no hurry, no expectation, no trace of the past except the faint whisper of wind. He paused at the top, inhaling the desert night, noticing how the dunes seemed to lean slightly, as if they could hear, not only the sound of his steps, but the rhythm of his breath and the quiet of his thoughts. And in that stillness, he felt the desert teaching a subtle lesson. It listens without judgment. The dunes don't demand movement or control. They only respond to presence. It reminded him of how often he had struggled to be seen, to be heard, to prove himself in ways that never truly mattered. Here, in the vast silence, he realized that being present was enough. No applause, no recognition, no permanent footprint required. Just a willingness to walk softly, to listen to the world and to himself, and to let each step become a meditation in its own right. As the wind circled his shoulders, carrying away the faintest trace of sound, he smiled inwardly, feeling a rare and deep calm settle into his chest, knowing that the desert remembered nothing and yet offered everything. As the wanderer moved past the listening dune, he noticed a soft shadow stretching alongside him in the silver moonlight. It was not his own exactly, but a companion shaped by the gentle contours of the sand and the quiet glow of the night. The shadow moved with him effortlessly, never overtaking, never lagging, simply reflecting his presence in perfect harmony. He felt no need to question it or understand it. It existed without demand, without expectation, teaching through quiet being rather than instruction. The desert had a way of showing that companionship, like life itself, often comes not from grasping, but from allowing, from walking with awareness and acceptance.
The wind whispered softly around him, brushing against the shadow, as though to remind it and him that everything in motion carries meaning without requiring explanation. In that space, the wanderer felt a profound sense of ease, a reassurance that the journey was never solitary in essence. The universe moves with us quietly, without judgment, holding each step, each breath, each moment as perfectly as it can. And as he continued forward, he sensed that some lessons are best understood not through seeing or touching, but simply by noticing that the world, in its vastness, walks alongside you, whether you realize it or not. The wanderer paused once again, lifting his gaze toward the sky, where stars stretched across the heavens like scattered embers in a dark, endless room. There was no rush to count them, no need to name them, no expectation that their light must touch him in any particular way. And yet, in that expansive silence, he felt an unexpected presence. The quiet between the stars seemed to speak directly to him, a gentle reminder that life's meaning often lives in the space between moments rather than in the moments themselves. The desert around him absorbed his steps, the wind softened, and even the dunes seemed to bend slightly toward the cool night, as if leaning into the same stillness. He realized that the hush was not emptiness, but a mirror for his own breath, a place where thought could settle without clinging. The stars didn't judge how far he had walked, nor did they measure the weight he carried. They merely existed, silently witnessing the rhythm of his movement, the calm of his heart, and the quiet unfolding of his journey. In that moment, he felt a deep connection to the vastness around him, understanding that life is not about the marks we leave behind, nor the distant destinations we chase. It is about noticing the spaces in between, the pauses that hold us steady, and the silence that teaches us to simply be.
The wanderer's footsteps carried him across a wide, empty plain, each movement sinking softly into the desert floor. He noticed how the sand beneath him shifted with ease, offering no resistance, holding no grudges for his passage, remembering nothing of where he had been. And in that absence of memory, he found a strange kind of freedom, the knowledge that the world does not demand permanence, that the universe does not cling to the traces we leave, and that sometimes the most profound impact is the quiet awareness it fosters within us. He slowed his steps deliberately, feeling the grains yield beneath his feet, each one a reminder that life's weight is not measured by what lingers, but by how gently we move through it. The wind whispered over the flat plain, raising small clouds of silver dust, lifting them into the night as though to say, "Let go." Nothing is owed to memory. Nothing must be held. And as he inhaled the cool night air, the wanderer felt the tension in his chest soften. He realized that the desert was teaching him a lesson, not through noise or instruction, but through its effortless indifference. The journey itself is what matters, that the marks we hope to make are temporary, and that our steps, however fleeting, carry meaning simply because they're walked with awareness and care. As the wanderer moved forward, he noticed a subtle echo following him across the dunes. It was not loud, not startling, but soft and measured, like the desert itself had chosen to mimic his footsteps and breathing. Each sound reflected not his mistakes or achievements, but a quiet rhythm, a gentle reassurance that existence does not demand judgment, only presence.
The echo reminded him of the way life often mirrors our inner state. When we move with calm, the world responds in kind, returning subtle signals of balance and ease. He stopped for a moment, listening to the faint repetition of his own steps, and realized how much time he had spent trying to control outcomes, striving to leave lasting traces, and seeking recognition in the wrong places. Here, under the vast sweep of moonlit dunes, he understood that the desert does not measure, does not compare, does not reward or punish, it simply is. And in that realization, a wave of peace washed through him, slow and deep, as though the echo itself had absorbed all the tension he carried and returned only the stillness he had longed for. The journey had become its own teacher, and the whispering echoes of his presence reassured him that meaning is found not in permanence, but in the gentle, aware act of walking.
Further along the desert plain, the wanderers spotted a small lantern hanging from a low, twisted branch, its flame flickering softly in rhythm with the breeze. He approached it slowly, noticing how the light responded to the faint movement of his breath, a subtle dance of warmth and shadow that seemed to acknowledge his presence without words. Standing there, he felt the quiet intimacy of the moment, a reminder that the smallest gestures often carry the deepest significance. The desert stretched endlessly around him, yet this small lantern, humble and steady, offered a sense of companionship, a quiet witness to his journey. He breathed deeply, and with each exhale, the lantern's flame swayed as if sharing in his rhythm, reinforcing the truth that connection need not be loud or dramatic. It exists in subtle synchrony, in awareness, and in gentle attention. Here, the wanderer realized that the world often mirrors what we bring to it. Calmness evokes calm, presence invites harmony, and even the softest light can guide us when darkness feels complete. For a long moment, he simply stood there, feeling the warmth of the flame, the cool of the desert wind, and the slow pulse of his own heart, learning once again that courage and trust grow quietly in the space between action and thought, between breath and step. As the wanderer left the lantern behind, he began to sense something subtle beneath his feet, not just the shifting softness of sand, but a pattern, a quiet sequence of impressions left by someone who had walked this path long before him. The footsteps were faint, nearly erased by time and wind, yet enough remained to suggest presence, intention, and a journey of their own. He did not know who had made them or where they had been going, but as he followed the delicate trail, he felt a strange comfort, a gentle reminder that no one truly walks alone through the landscapes of life. Every soul who has wandered, questioned, or searched before leaves behind a kind of invisible guidance, not instructions, but resonance, a shared silence that can steady the heart. The wanderer slowed his pace, respecting the fragile marks before him, and realized he didn't need to match them perfectly nor analyze their direction. It was enough simply to acknowledge them, to understand that every journey is a continuation of another, and that wisdom often arrives through noticing what we were never taught to see. The wind moved softly across the dunes, smoothing the traces of the path even as he walked, reminding him that legacy isn't found in the marks we force onto the world, but in the quiet influence we leave in the hearts of those who pass after us. And with every step, he felt his own presence deepen, becoming part of a larger, softer story.
There are moments in life when something begins to follow you, not out of danger, but out of quiet persistence. As the traveler walked deeper into the moonlit desert, he began to hear a soft rhythm behind him, gentle footsteps matching his stride. At first, he thought it was an echo, a trick of the dunes. But then he realized the sound came a heartbeat after each step, as if the desert was responding, returning his movement back to him. And strangely, the footsteps brought a sense of peace rather than fear. It felt as though the journey itself had grown aware of him, not judging, not intruding, simply accompanying. Each sound reminded him that the path was alive, that nothing he did went unnoticed by the world around him. The footsteps came as a reminder that companionship doesn't always arrive as another person. Sometimes it takes the shape of the land itself, quietly saying, "You are not walking alone tonight." As he continued, he felt lighter, realizing that sometimes the world follows you only to reflect the weight you've been carrying, offering a soft rhythm so you can finally walk in harmony with yourself.
Deep dunes have their own wisdom. They never stay the same, yet they never lose themselves. As the traveler moved across the desert, the dunes around him seemed to breathe, their ridges rising and falling with a gentle grace. Each step he took left a mark that the wind slowly softened, not erasing out of cruelty, but making room for the next moment. The traveler noticed how the sand gave way beneath his feet, supporting him just enough to keep moving, while reminding him that nothing in life is fixed. Even the ground beneath us shifts, adjusts, and reshapes itself. And maybe that's not a sign of instability, but of acceptance. The dunes weren't resisting him, they were welcoming him. They created small slopes where he needed ease, firm ground where he needed strength. In their shifting, he realized something quiet and profound. The world is not against you the way the mind sometimes insists. Often it bends slightly, patiently, to help you pass, asking for only one thing in return: that you release the weight you no longer need, so the journey can carry you instead of burden you.
Above the desert, the night sky stretched like an endless page of soft darkness. Stars glimmered with a calm that felt intentional, as if they were waiting for the traveler to notice them. He stopped walking, letting his breaths settle, and the sky responded by deepening its stillness. There was no pressure, no command, only an invitation to pause. For the first time in days, he inhaled fully, letting the cool air fill the parts of him that had gone tight and tired. And as his breathing slowed, the sky seemed to open wider, offering its quiet companionship. Sometimes the world doesn't push you to move. It waits patiently for you to rest. The traveler understood then that even silence has a rhythm, and even stillness can guide you. Under the slow drift of constellations, he felt a gentle truth settle inside him. Not every step forward has to come from effort. Some steps come naturally after you've allowed yourself to simply exist without trying to control every direction the night takes. As he resumed his slow walk, Something strange and soft glowed in the distance, a faint light, barely brighter than the moon-kissed sand. The traveler didn't remember carrying a lantern, yet the path ahead shimmered as if illuminated by one. He walked toward it, expecting to find a candle, a torch, or someone waiting. But there was nothing. No flame, no figure, just a warm clarity that seemed to form wherever he directed his steps. The desert had created its own lantern, a subtle brightness shaped by the reflection of the stars against the pale grains of sand. And with every step he took, the glow moved with him. It wasn't magic. It was the reminder that guidance often appears only when you've walked far enough to see it. The traveler realized then that the world doesn't always give you a full map. Sometimes it gives you just enough light for the next few steps, trusting that you will continue, trusting that you are capable, trusting that the path unfolds only when the heart is steady enough to walk it.
There, between the shifting dunes, a memory rose within him, not as a burden, but as a soft echo. It was a moment he believed he had left behind, something from a younger version of himself who walked quickly, decided quickly, held too tightly. The memory appeared not to judge him, but to travel beside him, reminding him of how far he had come. It didn't demand attention, it simply asked to be acknowledged. And as he let it settle in his mind, it softened, like sand slipping through fingers. Sometimes we don't outgrow memories, we simply stop resisting their presence. The traveler understood that memories only become heavy when we fight them. When we let them walk with us instead, they soften into companions, quiet teachers that show us how much of the journey we've already crossed. In that desert night, he realized that even the past can become light enough to carry peacefully. There comes a moment on every long journey when silence becomes more than the absence of sound. It becomes a presence of its own. As the traveler walked between the tall, moon-shaped dunes, the desert around him grew so still that it felt as though the night itself was waiting for him to finish a thought he hadn't yet noticed forming. The silence didn't press on him. It didn't demand anything. It simply surrounded him with a quiet that felt patient, almost wise. It was the kind of silence that appears when you finally stop rehearsing old fears and repeating old stories. The traveler felt something shift, not outside him, but within. For the first time, he allowed himself to listen, not to the world, but to the quiet place inside him that he had ignored for too long. And in that listening, he realized something gentle. Silence isn't empty. It carries every answer we've avoided, every breath we've hurried through, every truth that approaches slowly, waiting for us to finally be ready. And under the wide desert sky, he found himself grateful for the kind of stillness that doesn't speak until your heart is finally calm enough to hear it.
As he continued, something small brushed against his foot, a single grain of sand carried by a soft ribbon of wind. It landed on the top of his hand, glinting under the moonlight. Just one grain in an ocean of millions. Yet for some reason, he felt compelled to look closely at it. In that tiny speck, there was a whole history, a piece of stone worn down by years of wind, weather, and time, a journey far longer than his own.
And he realized that even something as small as this grain had endured change, pressure, and transformation just to exist where it was now. It reminded him that nothing is truly insignificant, not the struggles that shaped him, not the moments that softened him, not the steps that brought him here. The grain wasn't asking for attention, it simply existed, carrying its story without complaint. And the traveler felt a quiet humility wash over him. If something so small could survive its long journey without losing its place in the world, then maybe he too could trust the path beneath him. Maybe he could believe that every step he had taken mattered, even the ones he once wished he could forget. As the moon rose higher, the traveler noticed his shadow stretching far in front of him, long and soft along the dunes. It moved with him, yet slightly ahead, as if it were guiding him rather than following him. He watched how it shifted with each step, how it bent around slopes and softened over ridges. And he thought about how in life we often walk behind versions of ourselves, versions shaped by old expectations, by fears, by hopes we once held tightly. Sometimes our shadow represents who we used to be. Sometimes it represents who we're afraid to become. Yet tonight, his shadow didn't seem heavy or demanding. It walked gently, patiently, giving him space to breathe. It seemed to say, you don't have to chase anything. You don't have to run from anything. Just walk with yourself. And the traveler realized that even the parts of us we don't always want to face are not here to harm us. They're simply reflections shaped by the light we walk through. Under the quiet desert moon, he felt himself soften toward the pieces of his life he had been avoiding. The shadow wasn't urging him forward, it was inviting him to move with ease.
Hours passed, and the traveler sought a ridge he remembered from an old map, a high point where one could see the river, the moonlit valley, and the distant hills all at once. But no matter where he walked, the ridge didn't appear. He looked, searched, and circled back, frustration slowly building like heat beneath his ribs. Finally, exhausted, he stopped walking and sat on the cool sand. He let his shoulders drop, let his breath fall into a slower rhythm, and allowed the night to settle around him. And in that stillness, something shifted. The wind changed direction, the dunes realigned in subtle curves, and the ridge he had been searching for appeared quietly in the distance, exactly where he had already passed earlier. It hadn't been hidden from him, he had been moving too quickly to recognize it. The traveler exhaled, understanding that some answers, some realizations, some places of clarity can only be seen when you stop trying to force them into view. Sometimes the path reveals itself when you simply let go of the urgency to control it. As he approached the newly revealed ridge, a wave of cool desert air moved across the sand, brushing his face with a gentleness that felt almost intentional. He inhaled deeply, letting the night fill his lungs. The breath came easier than any he had taken in days, slower, fuller, more grounded. And he realized how long he had been breathing shallowly, not just tonight, but through entire seasons of his life. Breath is something we forget when we rush, when we worry, when we carry unspoken burdens. But tonight, the desert reminded him of the power of a single deep breath, how it could clear the fog from his mind, loosen the tension in his chest, and reconnect him with the world beneath his feet. This breath wasn't just air, it was a quiet returning, a homecoming to his own body, his own presence, his own stillness.
And as he let it settle through him, he understood something simple and profound. Sometimes the most important step in any journey isn't forward. It's the moment you finally remember to breathe.
And now, wanderer, as the desert fades, as the wind softens, as the last grains of sand settle into silence, you are no longer walking. You are resting, held, weightless beneath the quiet night. The journey has nothing more to ask of you. No more steps, no more searching, only stillness, the kind that gently wraps around the mind and reminds it that nothing needs fixing right now. Nothing needs understanding. Nothing needs effort. Let the last traces of thought drift like distant dunes disappearing into the dark horizon. Let your breath fall into its natural rhythm, slow, unhurried, belonging only to this moment. You have walked enough. You have released enough. You have been present enough. Now, allow sleep to rise from beneath you like a soft tide, carrying you inward, deeper, quieter, until the world dissolves into a peace too gentle to name. Good night from SleepyZenStory. May your dreams walk with ease.